Hello, Professor Payne. I'm a recruiter with MakingChips. I'm reaching out because a co-host position just opened up. And based on your experience with talking too much, I think you'd be a great fit. I'd love to have a conversation to see if this job piques your interest.
You want me to answer that?
Mike, you accepted the position. Awesome.
Absolutely. If I get to hang out with you, why wouldn't I?
That's good. Yeah, the culture is a match here. But you get those
That's
messages, right? Like, do you, as the owner, do you still get those messages all the time?
I'm shocked how many, I guess, just automated. We got a job match for you, like either email, phone calls, texts. And some days I'm tempted to reply.
It's almost exactly like that message too, right? It always has that standard.
That was pretty typical.
Yeah, like I googled the recruiter message, or it'll be like if you know someone at your company who's interested, and then they're like, "Well, it's me. I'm interested."
Right. Well, the other one I get, I assume probably all owners and probably a lot of non-owners get too, is really the same message, but that I want to buy your company.
Oh yeah.
Or that they have a buyer for your company.
Yeah. No, I'm starting to get those more, but I think they're just trying to get to my brother and my dad.
So Nick, what do we have on the menu today?
Oh, I have a delectable spread for you here. I got one of my old friends. He's a young guy, but he's an old friend. As a guest, he's going to be great talking about this topic of recruiting. And then we're going to start with a new segment here. Our buddy Paul, he's a pretty good teacher, but he's not the professor of Payne.
Paul. I've learned a lot from Paul.
Yeah, well, our audience is going to too, because we're doing this machine shop masterclass. So let's kick that off.
The day you stop learning is the day you stop growing. You live in an age of endless resources to equip and inspire you to be the best manufacturing leader you can be. But who can you trust in a world full of consultants and self-proclaimed manufacturing experts? Start with manufacturing leaders who've walked a mile in your shoes. Start with the doers who've actually made chips and made an impact. Start with a team at ProShop who have helped hundreds of shops elevate their skills, solve their problems, and grow their business. Have a seat and get out your notepad. The Machine Shop Masterclass starts now.
Marketing and sales should be a high priority for any business wanting to grow. Lack of a focus on sales and marketing is the number one reason why most manufacturers stay small or fail to deliver on the financial results desired by the owners. Making this a focus is particularly critical to machine shops and other precision manufacturers in our competitive industry. We have a term that we like to use called positive sales pressure, which is essential to the financial health and longevity of any business. Positive sales pressure means you always have more sales opportunities than your capacity, which translates into an abundance of RFQs coming into the sales pipeline. With plenty of RFQs, you can be more selective with what you quote, you can quote higher margins, and afford to win a smaller percentage of your quotes. This helps ensure a steady stream of good margin work that is always flowing into the shop. And that helps to ensure that you can always bill more revenue than your break-even amount each month, virtually guaranteeing that your fixed costs are covered and the revenue above your COGS, your cost of goods sold, of the jobs above and beyond your break-even point are contributing to a profitable month. I'm sure anyone who's in leadership of a manufacturing company knows how devastating it is to profitability where you have months where your revenue is below your break-even amount. You can have several profitable months in a row, only to have those profits wiped out by 1 or 2 slow months. It's a brutal feast or famine cycle. And it's natural when you get busy with jobs, you tend to slack off on doing new sales. So when the work ships, you're back to being slow again. We went through that cycle many more times than I care to admit at ProCNC. I hope we've conveyed the importance of being sales-driven. Okay, let's get into what to do. Get out your pencil and write down these steps to become a sales-driven company. Number 1, develop a brand that will resonate with your customers. And a brand is much more than just a nice logo on a website. A compelling brand identity resonates with target customers and will compel them to learn more about your company and how you can solve their problems with your value proposition. A key here is to focus on specific niches. It's hard to appeal to any particular end customer if you take a shotgun approach and try to appeal to everyone. Number 2, develop marketing materials and campaigns that effectively communicate the value proposition. The materials may include your website, printed materials, electronic media that you can email or have for download, and video content. The campaigns could include email newsletters, webinars, content marketing, social media marketing, paid advertising, search engine optimization for your website, and many others. The key is to start small and A/B test to determine what strategies, channels, and materials are the most effective, and then double down on those. If those terms are unfamiliar to you, look them up and study those to learn more. And the real key here is consistency. You must commit to doing this on an ongoing basis. Don't start and stop for a few weeks or even months at a time. Even when things get busy, you must stay the course and build the flywheel. Now that you've got a brand and marketing cadence dialed in, you also need to ramp up your sales engine. So step number 3 is to build a continuous, dedicated effort for your sales activities. This should be broken down into 2 main categories. Number 1 is your inbound sales, responding to the leads that your marketing activities have brought to you. It's critical to be very responsive and have great communication. You only have one chance to make that great first impression. So be quick to turn around questionnaires, RFQs, or any questions your prospects have. The second step is to develop an outbound sales motion, which can be focused on finding targeted accounts that haven't been captured by your inbound marketing. This would include networking events, trade shows, outbound calls, emails, or social media chat. Do the research about the companies you want to do work for and find the people, typically engineers and procurement, that you want to develop a relationship with. And my advice to you is to be very concise with your communication. Lead with your customers' pain points and how you can solve these problems. For example, I might have said back in the ProCNC days, "Hi, my name is Paul, and my company ProCNC specializes in machining and building turnkey assemblies for the cockpit of commercial and defense aircraft. We're AS9100 certified and have a 99.8% quality rating and a 99.5% on-time delivery rating for the past year. We would love to become your most reliable supplier and solve the headaches you probably have with your supply chain." Our last tip is to establish your company as a thought leader in the industry by publishing content that has significant value to your customers. For example, at ProCNC, we published Design for Manufacturability newsletters, or DFM newsletters, for 4 years and had an email list of thousands of engineers who subscribed. We published sales pitch-free advice on how companies could reduce the cost of their machine parts with simple changes to the designs of their parts. That developed into doing DFM boot camps for over 50 companies, bringing millions of dollars of machining business into the company. Those companies considered our shop a true partner and thought leader that they relied on for their own success. We hope this has inspired some ideas for how you can make your shop a more sales and marketing-driven company. Stay tuned for 9 more sessions of the Machine Shop Masterclass on MakingChips over the next many months. We'll cover topics from recruiting and team building to setup production and lean manufacturing tips and all things in between. Until then, keep those spindles turning.
Pretty cool. I'm excited about the new segment. Paul's always got good things to share with leaders of manufacturing companies. So,
Paul's, I know we've talked about it before, but Paul, me coming in by buying a shop into this industry, and I think I feel pretty comfortable running a shop now. And it's largely because of Paul and Pro Shop and, just everything I learned from his best practices.
Yeah. I mean, once you use that system, you just get locked in, and it's not just on the shop floor. He goes way beyond that.
Nope.
So I just had him join a call with my brother and we don't even use Pro Shop just to get some advice on a software company we're looking at. So anyway, I want to introduce my buddy here. So our guest today, like I said, old friend, but a young guy. He actually started his career as an engineering intern at our company, Advanced Machine and Engineering. And then he quickly advanced to become an applications engineer, a product manager, and then eventually a regional sales manager. And then he broke my heart, man. He moved away and took another technical business development role for another company closer to where he lives. He's not here to talk about AccuRide. He's not here to talk about linear motion, which is what he's focused on now. He is here to talk about the role he plays in recruiting manufacturing leaders. So welcome to the show, Trevor O'Malley. Good to see you, dude.
Thank you. I'll be here all night.
Yeah, I'll be here all night. Or morning, whenever you're listening.
Wherever you're at, whatever you're at, we're good.
You're not drinking a cider, are you?
I have a really fancy Miller Lite.
There you go. All right.
I got a rep. I love Wisconsin. I live in Illinois, but I love Wisconsin. I know.
So you're a Miller guy.
I'm anti-Illinois culture, I guess, but
there you go. What's more popular out by you, Mike? Bud Light, Miller Lite? Probably Miller Lite now. I would.
Coors, baby. It's Coors.
Yeah, I would say mostly Miller Lite.
Oh, Miller, okay.
Gotcha. Well, the reason why I brought up cider, one thing I love about Trevor is he and his twin brother started a content marketing platform. When did you do that? Like
7 years ago.
And it's called Cider Scene. So
Cider Scene. Yep.
So yeah, he basically just started reviewing ciders. Tell us a little bit about that, because it's kind of like making chips, but a little bit.
Sure. Well, just like anything else, I try to expand my boundaries and learn more through doing different types of things. And Cider Scene was one of them. My brother moved to Nashville. I have a twin brother, and we wanted to stay connected. So he said, "Hey, let's review ciders." He likes cider, and I was like, "Sure, I like cider too." And so we started reviewing them, and it kind of grew. So then we ended up becoming a marketing company for the cider industry, hard cider industry in the United States and Canada. So yeah, it's super fun.
So you haven't bought a can of cider or a bottle of cider in a long time?
No, in fact, I have a treasure trove under my bar that I need to get rid of because they've expired. I try to drink them all, but I don't have enough time in my day.
Mike, I'd say we should start like Bourbon Brothers, but there's so many bourbon content plays.
Oh my gosh, there's a ton.
There's no way we would make it, but
there's some great ones.
I think that's what's cool about what you and what's your brother's name again?
Nolan.
What you and Nolan did is like cider was kind of like blowing up right when you did it, and there wasn't a lot out there. Kind of like Making Chips. When we first started, we were the first like legit manufacturing podcast, and I think that's a big part of why we're successful, because
the theme of everything. Yeah. I think you're great, but everything's about finding, a niche, either a niche in the market, which we did. Cider didn't have a lot of representation, but we said, hey, let's not exploit it, but let's take that to the next level and make it approachable. And that's what we did.
Yeah. And
that's fun.
Mike, he's kind of like our style dude. He's like, hey, I want to stay in touch with my brother. Let's start a little business together. Or,
yeah, that's neat.
You're not actually a professional recruiter, but that's a little kind of side hustle you have, and what we're going to talk about today. So
transferable skills that goes across a spectrum of things. Yep.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. So I'm going to put you on the spot first before we get into the main topic here.
Okay.
You worked with me and my family business for a while, and I'm sure there's some memories. So doesn't have to be a good one. You don't have to try to glorify us here. Actually, please don't. But like one thing, funny, stressful, awesome, whatever it is, like give me one memory, one story from working at Advanced. Anything that pops in.
Oh man. Okay. Well, Is it sad that everything I think of revolves around drinking? One memory I have with you, Nick, that I really liked. That's when I started integrating with you guys in the marketing department when you were kind of doing all that stuff. And we went to IMTS, and you had a little little rental, like Airbnb, and I went and just hung out with you guys, shot it a little bit, and kind of just got to know you guys on a better level outside of work. So that was kind of one of those first times that really, sets in.
And I gave you some life lessons about your girl, right?
Yeah. And look, I married her and we have kids. So I'm not saying you changed the course of my life, but you might have.
No, that's awesome.
No, that's a great memory. But, honestly, my memory just of AME as a whole and Hennig was just the flexibility, the ability to kind of do a bunch of different things and learn. I mean, that was my training grounds with you guys. So
yeah, and obviously you've made a really successful career out of yourself. So it's cool to stay in touch and everything. And someday I'll get you back.
Keep trying, man.
Awesome. Well, right now you're helping me get other people, and that's what I want to move into. So,
sure.
Mike, I think I'll start by kind of telling the story of like how we engage with Trevor beyond just keeping in touch as old friends. And I don't know if I've ever told you about this, but did I tell you about how we use this LinkedIn recruiter tool?
No.
Okay. So like most manufacturers, we need people. Okay. Like everybody needs people. If you go around the world, it's number one on the list of problems or challenges is like, we need people. So, and also like most manufacturers, we have this kind of like, well, just give us the tools or give us the material and we can do it ourselves. like you
Right.
scanning a dash for your
A dash for a truck.
old truck, right, and figuring it out. And so I think that's part of what makes manufacturers awesome, and it can also be like their downfall too. So our former president has a family member who's like a corporate recruiter, and this person was like, hey, here's what we do. We all pretty much use the LinkedIn recruiter tool. And I say tool, I mean, like, this is like, I think it's like $100,000 a year to have it, and it's not cheap. And basically what it does, I mean, Trevor, you could speak to this a little bit more, but what it does is it kind of like unlocks that hidden part of people's profile that says like they're open to receiving messages from a recruiter. Is that it? Is that what you're paying the $100K for?
Yeah, it's like filtration system right through everything, so you can filter down the position, location, if they're open to working, not open to working, finding keywords in there and stuff. So it's really just the most specific way you can find someone on LinkedIn. Yeah,
it unlocks a lot of things that the free LinkedIn does not give you. That's right. I'd say.
Pay to play.
And I would say, like, if you're an awesome recruiter, you absolutely need that tool. And we did have some success. We made a couple of hires. I found my guy in Michigan, my regional sales director in Michigan, with the DIY method. But it's like you could buy a machine tool and not be a machinist. You can buy tools all the time and not really know what the hell you're doing. So we found out, like, I'm not saying it wasn't worth it because there was a lot of value there, but like the actual act of recruiting, the skill, the art and science of recruiting, you don't get just because you buy the tool. You still got to try to figure all that out, and you still got to try to do that with a fraction of your time to, like, what I mean? That's not my job. I'm not a recruiter. I don't know. I didn't go to school for that. Nobody trained me on that. So we had some success, but we were always kind of hesitant to engage with what we call like a headhunter, right?
It feels expensive.
Yeah, like what's typical, Mike? Like from your experience, if you were going to work with a corporate recruiter, what would be typical?
Man, I can't even remember. I mean, so we do some. It's different, obviously depending on the job, but we do some now with placement of machinists, and it's whatever hourly rate for X number of hours. And then they can become ours or whatever. I know in the past on some.
Are you talking about like a temp agency type thing?
I don't know what it's called in that classification. I mean, Trevor probably does.
Yeah, it's probably like a contract to hire type thing. So,
contract to hire.
The recruiter would have you as kind of
I think that's the right
these
term.
people as a contractor, and then they do a certain amount of hours, and they kind of turn into your employee. There's all different mechanisms of doing that, right?
And it's certainly at a premium. I haven't hesitated doing it because in our case, if I look at my fully loaded rate of my benefits and my taxes and all that, it's usually pretty close to a wash. I mean, it's not much more. Now on the maybe I don't know the right word, the professional, the white collar, whatever term you want to use there, that where you pay that finder's fee, that headhunter fee, it seems aggressive. And as a consumer of that service, right? I will tell you.
What do you think that percentage is? Just
I think we've generally paid somewhere in maybe the 30% range. It's probably been 6 or 7 years since I've done that, so I don't remember. But I will also tell you, I think anybody as a business leader can probably point back to those 5 or 6 people throughout your career that you've hired that made you feel like a really smart person. Like I made a great hire. So one of the people on that list that I have of 5, 6 people, I got her through a headhunter, whatever the appropriate term is.
That sounds really like headhunter, like holy shit,
right? But
like a little bit aggressive here, a little bit horror movie style.
Whatever that fee was for her, it wasn't enough. I mean, she was worth every penny we paid for that.
Absolutely.
I've had a few instances where I can't say that's the case,
mm-hmm.
but I will say, I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's been well worth the money. It's like I said, it's been 5 or 6 years maybe since I've done that. But
well, like if you do the
good.
math here, it's, let's say it's $100K for that LinkedIn recruiter. I think we split it 50K between Amy and Hennig, and I think we had like one recruiter account. If it was, let's just say 30%, that sounds. Well, Trevor, what's kind of like the industry average?
Industry standard.
25?
Well, it's a 25's industry standard. If you go to like a large organization, someone like a Robert Half or something like that, that's typical. Yeah.
So like, I would have to hire 4 people that made $100K, and then pay that times 4 for it to like kind of wash out, right? And I had to do all the work, and I'm not a recruiter.
Yep, time and effort, baby. Time and effort.
When we started thinking about it, I made a couple hires, and it's probably not the right tool for some operational level stuff. Now, if you're a machinist and you're listening to this, you should get on LinkedIn and make a profile like
100%.
Like you're an absolute executive of whatever type of machine that you run, because that's how you'll get a better job, in my opinion.
100%. 100% right.
I think a lot of times, like the production floor level employees aren't maybe on LinkedIn as much as we all hope they would be. So for me, it's more like functional leader, head of sales, head of HR, head of marketing, head of engineering, that type of thing. So, Trevor, would you agree with that?
I agree. I mean, typical white collar jobs are on LinkedIn. People in, different industries aren't even on LinkedIn. Just use healthcare as an example. Anyone should really be in there and build a good profile. It's going to either, present you other opportunities, or you're going to at least network with people. It's always a good thing. Honestly, LinkedIn is a great tool. So
I know this isn't the point of the show here, but I will tell you, I stay pretty active on LinkedIn. I check in on it a lot, and I interact quite a bit. And I have a few of my machinists on it, most of my management team's on it. But when I see these young machinists or older machinists, it doesn't matter. When I see machinists on there interacting with the community, like I want them. Like I want to recruit them to come to my shop.
Exactly.
Because if nothing else, I look at them and then I go look at their shops, right? So the marketing value that a machinist can bring their company is going to immediately increase their value to their company.
Think like a Ken Parent.
Ken Parent's a great example.
Like he's working for himself and just a little small shop in his garage, but like everybody knows that dude because he's out there on LinkedIn, like putting himself out there. So yeah, I hear that for sure. And I know who you're like, that profile, who you're talking about. That guy who's like, look at Tabs Tuesday. Like I've set this 5 boxes part up, or like some really challenging, clearance is clearance type thing, whatever.
Right.
It's freaking cool. And it's like, yeah, he's not just like pushing a button and going home and kicking his dog because he hates his life. Like he's into this.
Yeah. I want him. There's a couple there's probably 5 or 6 that if I could convince them to come to Oklahoma, I'd hire him in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, Trevor. So one of the things we talked about, just you working with us now, and we've had a few success stories so far, is like culture, right? We're a certain type of way here. It's a family business with a bunch of goofball brothers kind of running things, and we care a lot about targets, and we like really want to do well, but we're also not taking ourselves too seriously, so we have a certain culture, and not everybody's a good fit for that culture. And so like from your perspective, where you're trying to be this matchmaker, almost like like a matchmaker, like trying to match two people who
I'm a matchmaker.
How do you
call me recruiting Tinder.
Yeah. Exactly. How do you make sure we're swiping right on the right?
Yeah. I love that. Well, it's all about, honestly, recruiting as a whole. People look at it as, I'm going to get a collection of resumes, I'm going to parcel through it and ship it out. That's traditional recruiting. That's not really what makes a good recruiter. Matching cultures, like you said, I think of it as business development. I want to get to know, say in this case, you Nick, you and AME, get to know you guys intimately. What makes you tick? What adds value to your business? What you guys are looking for? What a cultural fit for a employee would be. And then when I go out there and I find these people, I want to make sure that they align from that standpoint. So not just talking, hey, how much money do you want? That's what everyone asks, like you guys get those emails. You need to get to know that person. It's like building rapport, just like you would with a customer. It's absolutely no different than building relationships with customers and getting to know what they want, right? So getting to understand what they're looking for, and maybe they want a corporate business where it's no intimacy, right? There's no family relationships, or they
when
want
you clock out, you clock out.
That's
and,
it.
That's it. Yeah, a lot of people want that actually.
Yeah, that's true. But sometimes they want this more intimate, family, understanding how you guys tick and things like that. So really, a recruiter's job is to be a matchmaker, not only from like you said, a cultural fit, but just understanding the personalities, their relationships, what they're looking for. Value matches the value, time matches the time, that type of stuff. Yeah.
So Trevor, I love that, Nick brought up culture and you talking about that. So, I don't know that you know anything about my background, but
Sure,
I bought my machine shop I have now 6 years ago. We've bought a few more since.
Sure.
So I'm used to inheriting people, right, with those transactions. And I usually know, honestly, sometimes within a day or two, certainly within a month, if someone's going to fit my culture.
Sure.
And if I look back 6 years ago when we bought Hill, there was a handful of people I knew wouldn't fit, and
sure,
and they're not here anymore. We didn't come in and make immediate changes, and I think in most of those cases they left, right? Because they didn't like the culture I knew.
Yeah, sure. It goes both ways, right?
It's almost best that way, right, Mike? Like, hey, this thing ain't. It's like if you're on a blind date and this ain't the one, they probably know it too. So it's like,
yeah,
right.
They walk in, they look at you, and walk right out.
Yeah, that's fine. Does that happen to you a lot, Trevor?
No. I luckily didn't have to deal with the dating app world, but anyways.
Yeah. So I completely recognize the culture, right? And a lot of those people I'm talking about were really, really good at their job as a machinist, as a manager, whatever. But let me just throw this out there, because there's probably a lot of people listening. They're going to be in the same boat. So when we get off this call, probably today, and certainly before this is the listeners hear it, I'll be posting that I'm hiring a quality assurance, an inspector, manager, technician, whatever, someone to kind of take care of most of our inspection. We'll still have a quality manager, and we've got a job description. We've got, the kind of the job requirements and so forth. But I think we all kind of struggle with identifying, is someone going to fit our culture, right? So for me, I like a very entrepreneurial culture. I want, as Nick pointed out earlier, like, I'm a get it done type people. I'm not real big on job descriptions, silos, like this is my job, that's your job. I like a team that just, excuse my language, gets shit done, whatever it takes. So given that I'm getting ready to go into that, I'm sure as soon as I post that, I'll hear from people. How do I judge that? I can see if they have the technical skills, but how do I decide does someone fit my culture? I know how I've done it, but I'm just curious from your experience.
Sure. Well, I think there's two things. One way to do it is you talk to the people you find the most qualified, and you have to come up with the concept of what your culture is, right? You have to know and be able to express that to them. And like you said, it's entrepreneurial. I know Nick definitely agrees with that. You want people that are kind of treat it like their own business. So really, being able to identify those key terms or ways you want to describe it.
Maybe like values, like
Sure.
Different people have different values,
Sure.
Right?
Sure. Like you just want to be able to kind of in a nutshell, be able to describe what your culture is and see how they feel that out. That's number one, right? You could just talk to all the most qualified candidates. The other way that I consider that could weed people out is you kind of come up with like a day-to-day or like a culture statement or something like that you can express to people and say, yes, we want people with these technical skills, but we also want this culture fit. And I've been seeing that a lot more in job postings where they have kind of a description of what your day-to-day would be like, what the company's like. And that might weed people out right away.
Almost like a positioning statement, but for yourself as an employer.
That's correct. Yeah. And people, I think they respect that nowadays because they want to go in, okay, I have the technical skills. I already know that. Is this a company I even want to work for? And, it kind of eliminates someone who comes in, wants to work for 2 months, see how it feels and leaves. That's no good for anybody. So,
yeah.
It's an open line of communication right from the beginning, if you can.
And I get that, but I mean, I'm going to put myself in the shoes of, and I've been there. I need a job. Right. And you've got a job that fits my skills, maybe perfectly, maybe close enough. Maybe I'm going to tell you they fit perfectly and I'm going to learn a little bit on the job.
Yeah. That's
a
real person.
There's a point in there though. You can tell me all about your culture. You can tell me all about your statement, and we have those things, and I can share those things. But I'm going to just tell you yes, because I need a job, right? I've got a wife and kids at home that I need to take care of. So, I mean, is there any secret? Is there any, have you ever found like that secret sauce to like kind of weed that out? Like, no, this person really doesn't care about your culture.
Sure. I suppose you can create situational questions. It's one of those things that you got to still take people at face value. Unfortunately, there are people that are really good, call them liars, but really good. Entrepreneurial is really the way.
Question answers.
Yeah, they're just great. They got canned answers. They're good at it. I think creating situational, and again, that's not always the easiest thing to do, to create like a cultural question that has an answer, but certainly you can come up with some situations or dynamics or something like that.
Well, let me give you an example that we use, Trevor. So this is when we were in DIY mode with trying to recruit, and it totally backfired. And I still don't think we did. Like some of the stuff, Mike, is you just can't ever know.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you don't really know what you got when you hire somebody for like 6 months.
Actually, I completely agree with you. Except sometimes you do, right?
Yeah. Sometimes you know right away, and you try to like lie to yourself, like you're in denial,
and you just play.
Because like maybe that girl you went on that date with is really attractive, and you're just like trying to convince yourself that she doesn't suck, and she just always did.
Yeah, no, she's fine. She's fine.
She's great. I'll change. It's my fault, right?
Yeah. Okay.
No, but here's an example. Okay, so we were recruiting a regional sales role, which is typically what I do, and we were down to 2 candidates. And one guy had like a metrology degree and was pretty smart. And the other guy had like a little bit of adjacent experience and was just a super nice dude. Like he was like the guy you wanted to have a beer with. And we all know, like in sales, especially this kind of sales, like Trevor, you were an applications guy, and you're a perfect example. Like you're technical enough to never be like, who's this guy from an engineer? You are an engineer. And then also you're relatable. You can connect with people. You're someone you'd want to have a beer with. So we kind of had this like either or. The one guy that was like really easy to get along with kept calling our products like chippers. We make chip conveyors. He's like, yeah, I could sell some chippers. And it's like, nobody says that. And that was a little bit of a red flag. Like
yeah, that's a red flag.
If you go into Hill Manufacturing and try to sell someone a chipper, he's going to kick you outside and tell you to cut down a tree.
Actually, I might like that. But point taken.
He was an arborist, clearly. Yeah.
And then the other guy, so anyway, we're like, what do we do? So we put together all these situational questions, and it was like stuff where there's no like clear yes or no answer. And the one guy we ended up hiring was just like really good at answering those questions. And it's like, man, when you put that in front of him, he thought about it. He answered them really well. And so we just hired that guy. And, back to this, like some of this is just luck. And here's my takeaway. Actually, thinking about it, this is my takeaway. I will never hire a person again that I haven't had dinner with and spent time with.
Yeah, right. You need to spend time.
Because all of this was a region that was far away from home. And after we made the hire, the first time I went out to dinner with this guy, I was like, oh boy, I messed up.
No, yeah. So, for everybody listening on here, we hire a large variety of people, right? And there's some level of people we hire at Hill that's probably not going to happen every time. I mean, I'd love for it to. It just, can't. There's
You mean going to dinner every time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because for me, it's like 12 roles. They're all director level or above.
Right.
Like,
work for every organization.
But that's a great point. There was a guy a couple of years ago. I was 100% on board hiring him as a salesman, and I've been pushy back and forth whether or not I needed to hire a salesman. That doesn't matter. I mean, we need one, but did we need one full time? Was kind of the question. But this guy, I was really impressed with this one person that we work with. And I thought, man, if he ever becomes available, I want him. Well, he became available. I was actually leaving the country for 2 weeks. And, he had reached out and I said, look, I'm leaving the country. Let me connect with you when I get back. By the time I got back, he had accepted another job. I was kind of kicking myself that I didn't just say, when he called, I didn't just say, okay, I'll see you when I get back. Just be in the office. 2 months later, I happened to be paired with him at a golf tournament. Spent 4 hours with him. And if he worked for me, I would be, I would have not been happy.
Sure.
Been one of those 9-iron to the neck things, right?
Yeah. And, so, I mean, I think to your point, I mean, it is critical to have those discussions. And Nick, like when we're buying companies, when we're looking at the person that's going to run it, I mean, that is something we do, right? Like we're going to spend some time. We're going to take you and your spouse to dinner to make
That's
sure
a huge one too. You're marrying the guy's family.
Right. Yeah. I understand
the guy or girl's family. You're marrying that whole thing, So.
Yeah. Especially someone that's going to run a company, right? Like, I really want them. I really want to understand, or a division, or just your manager. I mean, not just your manager. That's an important role, but anybody just that you're going to be relying on 24/7, right? I think that's critical. Just that time with not only them but their family to just really understand. Like, is this guy going to be or gal going to be getting a call at 4:30 every day, going, "When are you going to be home?" And going to be in trouble when it's like, I've got to stay tonight because we've got a problem. It might be 8, 9, 10 o'clock tonight before I get home. And not necessarily a bad thing, but you want to know that going into it, right?
Right. So, Trevor, it's funny when we talk, I'm always like, hey, just find me another you, dude.
Yeah.
And what I mean is like,
always tough though. Yeah.
Engineering kid, got a degree, isn't like, people talking, like
sure,
right. Can
stereotype engineer,
right? Like beep, beep. And that's hard to find with that mix. And so it's like the other dynamic here is typically we're a podcast for manufacturing leaders. Manufacturing leaders have jobs. That's why they're leaders. They're not like unemployed. Like, man, I can't get a job as a applications guy for a machine tool company. If someone tells you that, you're like, you're either terrible at your job or, something's wrong here.
Something's wrong.
Everybody needs that, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're trying to go after people who are employed, it's a little different than like what you said when you brought up the traditional receive resumes and then filter through them and say, okay, do you want a job? So how do you go about that kind of, like back to the dating? A lot of this is like dating. Like you go up to a girl, you talk to her at a bar, you're like, man, that's a good looking girl. She's probably got a boyfriend. How do I even start this conversation?
Sure. Well, again, I really relate this all to business development type aspects, right? So when you're talking to a candidate, say they got I think you're kind of alluding to someone who has a job already, or someone has a good job, right? And you're like, this is the guy I need, right? Well, again, it's, getting in contact with them, talking to them, and really understanding, just like you would anything else, right? What values they have, what needs, what wants, what pain points they have, just like a customer, you're selling to. What's your pain point? It takes a little bit of massaging to get this out of people, but, really understanding what their next 5 years looks like, what they're looking for, what they actually value. Maybe they have a great job in terms of, day to day, and they get paid well, but there's always a pain point. And if there's not, then they're not the right fit for you.
Well, so hang on to that, because I want to ask you about the compensation part. But part of me, while you're answering, I'm realizing like you're reaching out as a recruiter. It's a little weirder when you're reaching out as some dude who thinks you should work for them and he knows you have another job.
Yeah, it's a dilution.
Maybe that's why you should use a recruiter.
Well, I think the dilution point really helps. And then you got multiple stages, right? So we're talking again about finding people for culture fits. If I'm asking questions and I know that they're BSing me, I'm not going to even present them to you. If they get past my radar, which is different from maybe Mike, your radar, right? And you ask them a whole nother set of questions, it's much harder to BS two people who have different points of view than it is just one person, right? So recruiting also adds this like dilution point that makes it a little bit more comfortable, right? I can ask more uncomfortable questions.
You that's your job. You should be reaching out to people. For me, if I'm reaching out to somebody and being like, hey, do you like your job? Like,
sure. Yeah, it might be a little odd, or they'd be like, oh, this guy really wants me. I can take him to the bank. Whereas I can go, dig in a little bit more, find out what they're looking for. And I can say, oh, I don't have this job for you, but I might have this job for you. There's just a little bit more angle to work with. And then I can feed it to you if I think that hits all the boxes, right? So it just helps make it a little right.
1 degree of separation or whatever. I think
it's not good. 2 degrees or more. It helps for sure. Yeah,
sure. And
it's
as you're talking, I'm thinking like almost more important than understanding, or maybe not more, but equally important to understanding if you fit with the candidate is if you're going to work through a recruiter, do you fit with them? In our world, chipper is like not what people say, right? Maybe that guy would have been great. Who knows? I ended up getting an awesome guy after both of those dudes, so I'm happy. But how do you, that radar of like nobody says chipper? People call it a chip conveyor, and
sure.
So it's like I get messages from headhunters like literally 5 times a week. They're good at getting people messages. That's part of what they do.
Sure.
But with you, like mostly because I have a unique advantage. You worked at our company, right? You know everything about this world because you were on our sales team.
Sure.
But I know like what people should say. You know the difference between a mill and a lathe. You don't call it a lathe.
That lathe is going really,
So when we're working with you, it's like, oh, this dude gets it. And I think that market fluency, that industry fluency is just, and that relationship is so important because you're not going to bring me something that's going to waste my time. So that's hard to find, man.
I think that it is hard to find. So industry specific recruiting is not how, there are large organizations that have people in the right position, right? They're technical recruiters for manufacturing. But if you're going to a data recruiter, right, you want to bring someone on, you should ask them, questions that you would typically be asked and see if they know the answers. If they don't, they're probably not a good fit. And most recruiting firms, especially large ones, that chair is getting turned over. These people don't really have the hands-on experience. That's where I think we add value because I'm approaching companies. Hey, can I recruit for you? When I have it either, in your case, a knowledge of your culture, which isn't common, but do I understand your business, your the type of positions you're going to want to fill? That is so important, finding the right recruiter.
Because like, what is manufacturing?
Sure. Yeah.
What is that? You know what I mean? Metalworking.
Yeah. What does that mean?
Metalworking manufacturing is this kind of like little niche inside that broader manufacturing.
Right.
So when someone's like, "Oh, we specialize in industrial recruiting," like, if manufacturing is a term that kind of means everything but nothing, industrial is even worse.
Oh yeah, it could be anything, right? So, I think being specific in all of these, right? When it comes to the recruiter you're getting, they should have some knowledge of your type of business, at least somewhat specifically, so that they can find the right people. And if they don't, they're probably going to be sending you a bunch of crap. And again, for you, Nick, I know your culture, but that's not, typical. But on an intake call, if I, understand your business, what you're looking for, the type of jobs that you do, or maybe you're a job shop that does something specific, that is so important. And being able to articulate that to people so that they can find the right candidates is pretty necessary. And I think this what gets a bad taste in the mouth. For a lot of companies like yourself who are like, oh, I'm a headhunter, let me help you. And you go, what do you know about me, right?
Well, that's what caused us to do the DIY thing initially. It was like, we just need to know who was like willing to receive a message about like an opportunity for a new job. That's what we needed. We were like, just get us that tool. And I think the more we learn about it, it's like, it's more than tool. There's a whole skill to it. I'm not going to ask you to share all your secret sauce or anything, but like, there's a skill to selling machine tools. There's a skill to buying companies if you're Mike, or selling machine parts. Sure. There's an art and a science to all this stuff. And you don't just get a machine tool and become an expert machinist. You know what I mean? You don't just have a product to offer and like sell a mill.
Right.
Or whatever it is. So it's just like, I think that's, in hindsight, we kind of thought, oh, we can do this.
Sure.
And we did get a couple people, but it's like, recruiting's a thing, man.
Well, it's a skill set.
As a serial entrepreneur, it's no different than everything you go through as a business owner and entrepreneur. You can do it all yourself because you care, you want to, you have to, whatever. However, to really grow and expand, you need professionals in those roles, right? Just like I was mentioning earlier about sales. My company's not at a point where I need a full-time salesperson. I and others can fill that role in this temporary mode. At some point, for me to really grow and expand, I need a professional salesperson that knows how to sell machine parts. Whether it's an accountant, whether it's a quality manager, like I was talking about, we're in the market for. You have to have professionals involved. And in this case, if you want to bring the best to the table and you can't afford to hire a full-time recruiter, you need to have a headhunter recruiter, whatever the temporary recruit, whatever the right word there is. And that's how to identify. And I think that's true of all aspects of our business.
Right. Once you get to a certain size, it's like, hey, we should employ this person. But maybe in that interim layer where it's like, I don't know how many jobs I'm going to need to find right now. And it's like variable versus fixed cost. It's like hire a manufacturer's rep or employ a direct sales guy.
Right.
Yep.
You know what I mean? There's always some sort of paradigm on when it makes sense for whatever you're looking to do. And I think regardless, if you're going to work with a recruiter, you have to make sure that person knows the words you use, knows how a shop's supposed to smell, the words somebody's supposed to say and how they're supposed to say them. You know what I mean? Because what's an engineer? What's a manufacturer? What is manufacturing? What is industry? These things are all so broad. A chemical engineer and a mechanical design engineer are not the same thing. And it's just tough to find.
That's a takeaway for me because I will be honest, we get daily, weekly visits, regular cold calls, not necessarily cold calls, from recruiters in our market on a regular basis about machinists, about, all sorts of skilled labor positions. And I mean, if I'm honest, I blow them off, right? Like I let somebody else, they very seldom get past the front desk. So maybe I shouldn't be surprised when they don't find me the right people, right? Because I haven't spent time with, and I haven't explained to them the type of people I'm looking for.
Well, that's the thing. Intake calls are super important. I would just say, caution people as business owners or people in positions that have these.
So, when you say intake call, what is that?
Sure. Which I'll kind of break into. So, imagine you're picking a sub supplier for something that you guys are doing, right? You're going to talk to them. You're going to ask them what their capabilities. You're going to listen to them and say, this guy either knows what he's talking about or not. When you're working with a recruiter, it's important not just to sign on the dotted line. It's to have a hour long, maybe a couple hour long, again, maybe out for lunch, or a couple different sessions to understand their skill set. Are they BSing you? Do they know what they're talking about? Can they talk the talk? Do they understand the lingo? Do they know your area, right? That could be a whole nother thing. Do they even know the region you're talking about? Those type of things, just like you would do with a supplier, you need to be intimate on that stuff. You can't just, in good faith, go, that's a huge organization. I know they have the resources. I'll probably take you to the cleaners or just send you a bunch of resumes that they have. So,
yeah, that's a super good point. And I even liked how you said, like, do they even know the region? The same job in a different region,
they might have
could
no
be
idea.
Totally different dynamics.
Exactly.
Because of cost of living or like the type of companies that are around there. A machinist.
Yeah, what competition?
is different than a machinist in wherever, right? Because I always think of it, Wichita as like aerospace land, So it's just oil and gas land is different than aerospace land, which is different than screw machine stuff. So good point there. And I thought it was an awesome episode. I'm glad we had you on. Just for the audience, we asked for the 3 R's: rate, review, refer it to somebody. So if you're like pretty much everybody I talk to and you're struggling to find the right people, maybe it's like operational role and this isn't really the exact conversation for it, but maybe it's a functional leadership role or a sales division or a sales region or whatever. We'd love to talk. I mean, reach out to us. We can connect you with Trevor and see where this goes. But I've had a lot of success. Typically, the way Making Chips works for me is if I need to learn something, or if I did learn something, I want to share it, or I want to have somebody on as a guest. So happy to have you on, Trevor.
I really appreciate it, guys.
Thanks for your
thanks, Trevor.
So
yeah, it was great.
Maybe we'll have you and Nolan on one time and talk about cider or something.
I got so many other things to talk about, man. Just I'm a serial entrepreneur, like Nick said. That's how I like to think about it.
So if you need cereal, Trevor's got you.
That, I will be honest, I'm not an expert in. See, not a culture fit.
Mike, how do we end the show, man?
Well, if we can't get people, we can't make chips. And if we're not making chips,
we're not making money. Bam.
Bam.